Hi, I'm Greg Burns, founder of Nature's Image Farm and Hive wax-dipped equipment. Hey, as large family beekeepers, we saw a major need to do way better in protecting our investment with our beekeeping equipment from the elements for the long haul. So I coupled our practical beekeeping experience with our wood science background to create the Hive wax-dipped line of beekeeping equipment. Our unique wax dip process expels water from the wood, replaces and impregnates it with our proprietary blend of microcrystalline wax, offering superior weather protection without the mess or expense of paint. Our equipment is protected from the weather inside and out, preventing box rot, fungal growth, and decomposition. That's a huge savings in both time and money. No more reworking tired, worn out boxes year after year. Our wax-dipped equipment is proudly made in the USA. So protect your investment with Hive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. Hive, built to endure. Well, good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Nature's Image Farm podcast episode featuring the one and only Stream Team. Bruce, Brian, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back.
It's late summer, and a lot of folks are trying to figure out what in the world do I do next? Where am I at now? Are these bees ready for winter? Am I ready for winter? Should I even be thinking about getting ready for winter? And all those folks who have been beekeeping for more than a couple years have an awful lot of opinions about that. We're going to get into quite a lot of he said, she said tonight. Our goal tonight is to have a big late summer Q&A show to answer your questions. So if you have questions tonight, be sure to put them in all caps. We're going to try to get through as many as we can. Super chats are enabled. So if you feel like you want to donate to the show, those comments automatically get starred, and we'll be sure to get those questions up in the forefront. Here in Ohio, there's a lot of things going on down in Dothan, Alabama, where Bruce is. I'm sure it's a whole different scenario. So before we get started, just want to thank everybody for tuning in, spending time with us live on the Nature's Image Farm podcast here live on YouTube. If you're listening to the replay later, we just want to thank you for spending time with us. Let's shoot on down to Alabama and visit with the Dothan Shogun himself. Bruce, tell us all about late summer beekeeping. Where are you at this week in your beekeeping journey?
Well, I finally got in the colonies about on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. And excuse me. And they looking pretty good. I didn't have a chance to get through all of them. I got too hot. I was out messing with them, and the heat just got to me, and I had to just stop. I was in the middle of working through Appling Farm, going through checking the Apiary results from the Auburn studied bees, and just got a few hives in, and a guy was coming down from Rick was coming down from north of Atlanta to pick up some buckets of honey from me, and he was ahead of schedule, so I drove up to the farm. We got his buckets of honey. And of course, when someone comes to visit, if it's a beekeeper, you know, there's going to be some visiting that happens. And so we visited for quite a while, and my brother came over. We talked for a while, and then I got out and decided to change my strategy. I went up and finished everything kind of up, I call it my north route, the farm, Ozark and Midland City. I didn't do the cell tower bees. The Apiary's not ready to come out of those yet. And by the time I got down in Midland City, it was so hot, I almost got in trouble, and so I had to just stop. And so those Apiary strips are going to stay in a little bit too long, maybe a week over what they're supposed to stay in. The rest of the ones down at Appling Farms and Slocum and down that way. But I'd had to, you know, it was a matter of going down and trying to continue or really getting in trouble. So that's what's happening here. I did find the hives to be mostly looking pretty healthy. I had an interesting thing happen though in Midland City. The first two boxes I went in were splits that we had done last spring, and the first one I pulled the lid off, and I saw that familiar yellow nasty slime. You know, got about a box down and saw that the hive beetles had done their work, and so I tilted the box forward and I've never seen so many hive beetles, fully mature hive beetles, very few larvae on the bottom board. Probably just, I mean, it was like it looked, you know how the larvae usually, if it's really bad slime out the larvae, that's how the beetles looked. They were just everywhere. So I pulled out my trusty blowtorch and, you know, the little propane torch. And man,
I love that
it's
smell.
just kind of evil, but it's kind of fun. I just ran that over those beetles and just killed thousands and thousands of beetles. I mean, it was crazy how many beetles. It was probably, I don't know, a lot.
Gazillions.
The next colony, which hopefully that'll save some of my other colonies out there. I didn't see a lot of beetles in most of my colonies, but for some reason, those two had a big collection in that one. The next colony I tipped forward also on the same pallet, this Ketty corner. It was across, you know, from it. Same thing, opened it up, hive beetle slime out, but it was the typical larvae all over the bottom. And of course, I pulled out my trusty blowtorch again and took care of the larvae. And so, but the rest of the colonies I went through, they looked pretty good. I didn't really see any more, not a lot of hive beetles. It was just so strange how those two colonies, they were sitting on the end. Something about those two colonies had drawn the hive beetles in, and so that was kind of frustrating. Whenever you see that, it's frustrating. But I haven't seen a lot of hive beetles except for, you know, apparently the hives are just weak and they kind of drew the beetles in and they had taken over those two. But for me, I mean, so far this year, I've had fewer hive beetle losses than typical. Normally July and August, I get hammered with a decent percentage of my bees get kind of hammered down with those. And we're not done with the summer yet, but overall, I'm pretty pleased with what I'm seeing. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. I had the opportunity last night to go up to Ozark, Alabama. It's about 20 miles north of here, and speak at Lynn Hughes, a place they have a store up there, the Farmer Daughters store up there, and they also have a little restaurant in there. And he's started a bee club up there. Lisa, that's where Grammy goes up there now. She goes up to that bee club, and had about 25 people, I think, there last night. And I just asked if I come up and talk about my beekeeping journey, and I did. It was a blast. Actually, Lisa streamed it live on her channel last night. I'll go back and watch kind of what was said. We had a good time with it, and I just really enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing that kind of thing, and just it wasn't anything fancy. We just kind of went through my journey and had a good group there. And it's always kind of cool to hang out with other beekeepers and kind of see where everybody's at. And we've just developed a new product here. First time we just yesterday was the first day we actually sold any of it. It's a little hot honey we have here.
Oh,
so it's pretty. It's really, I mean, it's pretty mild, but people seem to like it. So we're gonna start trying to market that, see how it works around here, and if it sells well, and if people like it, if we get the recipe kind of honed in, we may start opening that up, putting it on the website and stuff. And I have to make some adjustments to the labels. There's a couple things on here I think that I didn't do properly by state law, so I need to kind of work on that a little bit. For now, first couple of 100 bottles are going to be kind of a trial run to see what people think. And so that's a new little product that Bruce's Bees that we're trying to introduce a little bit here. So it's not, like I say, a lot of hot honeys, a lot of hot products are just super hot and spicy. And I personally don't care for super hot and spicy things. And so we've made more of a mild to medium type honey. My daughter actually came up with a formula for it. And so we'll see how it turns out. It's the first batch she made. She made a small batch for a trial. It was kind of more of a medium heat, and it was a little bit, it was right there on the edge. It was kind of really good for most people, but right on the edge. This is more mild this time, but we might need to kind of get it kind of in the middle between the two. And I think we'll really have I think this is already a winner, but we're going to tweak it just a little bit and see.
nice.
So that's what's happening down here. Beyond that, I did an interview with Bracken Barker from Utah Sunday. He told his story, and Greg, I think you were on the call on that stream that night when Bracken came on briefly, or maybe it was Brian. One of you guys was on here, and he has been through a lot in his life. He's had a great story of redemption, and he tells a story on this stream, on this interview that I'm going to post up here in the next few days. And I'd encourage everyone to take a look at it. He's just a good dude, and he talks about how the bees literally saved his life. I know a lot of people are in that category, who maybe even some on this stream right now, how the bees actually saved their life, and he is in that category. And so it's really a neat, heartfelt interview, a little more deep and a little more serious than a lot of the interviews I've done. It's just not talking about bee stuff, it's talking about life. And so we had a really nice conversation. I'm in the process of getting that edited and uploaded. Hopefully maybe Saturday or Sunday I can get that taken care of. So that's what's going on down here. Just kind of trying to get through all the colonies and get everything, see what the status is, and then maybe lay some groundwork for next year.
Bruce, sounds like you've been busy.
Pretty busy, yeah, but we actually took a weekend off a couple of weeks ago. We went over to Savannah, Georgia, and just a little family vacation. My wife and me and Lily, and then Savannah, my daughter that has 2 grandbabies, and her husband went over there and paid Savannah a visit, and it was fun. And with 2 little kids, it's hard to really go and enjoy the history of the town. But we had a good time just hanging out with the family, and we've been busy, but it hasn't all been bees. So it's been a good time.
Awesome.
Well, the hot honey, I think you're on to something there. Let me see if I can pull a Brian Wizardry here. Let's see. Is that showing up there? I had Mike Art from Easy Ox stopped out today and dropped off some hot honey. And now I've had a limited experience with hot honey. And Spanky over at Filament Corner, boy, he makes a hot honey. He makes a hot honey that it makes your eyes just start dripping and your ears start sweating, and it's good. I wasn't quite used to that. Mike brought over one, and boy, it's interesting because how do you craft your hot honey to where it has heat and it has flavor and it has sweet? Trying to find the balance in between there where it's not just hot for the sake of being hot for like bragging rights, right? Or where it's barely hot enough to you're like, just kind of getting in the way of the honey. Trying to find the balance in between there. So Bruce, I'll be interested in maybe giving yours a shot sometime too. But I'm gonna see if I can pull it. Can I do this, Brian? Let's see if I can do this thing here real quick. I'm gonna show you what my dinner was.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about this stuff is I've never had hot honey either, and like I say, it's pretty mild, which I kind of prefer that. But the first taste is just sweet; it just tastes like honey, and then that heat comes in on the back end. It's just kind of a unique thing that happens. I'm not sure if that's the way it is with all hot honey, or if that's just kind of how it was with this blend that my daughter came together with. But you taste it, and you're like, oh, that's really good, and it's sweet, and then all of a sudden you feel that little tingle, that little burn, and it's really pretty neat how it works.
How do you now you don't have to give all the details, but how do you make that?
There's so many ways that my daughter makes it, so I'm not really sure. We use this particular recipe has, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how she makes it. I'd hate to.
Yeah.
She puts peppers in the honey and then strains them out, and then we have the honey.
Bruce, what's your favorite thing to eat the hot honey on so far?
I haven't even tried on anything yet, so.
All right, let me show you this.
I just stick it on my tongue and eat a little bit of it. Oh yeah.
That is a white cheddar, Wisconsin white cheddar cheese curd.
That sounds good.
How the heck did you get those?
Oh, me being the culinary adventurist, I journeyed over to the A&W hamburger joint down the road there, and they happen to have cheese curds in the drive-thru. I was actually looking for chicken fingers, which I did find those. But cheese curds with hot honey, oh my gosh. It is just absolutely amazing. So what's interesting with and I'm not guys, I am not like a honey expert by any stretch. I don't imagine that. What I noticed is the honey of itself, and I don't know all the peppers. There were like really scary names that Mike mentioned, like
Carolina
Murderous Ghost and Carolina's Reapers, Creepy Uncle Dave's Killer Ant, whatever these weird names of stuff were. They sounded scary. They made me sweat just the names of them. But it's got you at first. It hits your tongue, then all of a sudden you start to feel the heat. And then you feel flavor, or you start to get a deep flavor. Then these other layers of heat and then flavor with this overall kind of candied honey heat. Exactly. Extremely interesting.
It is very interesting. Very good too. So anyway, a lot of people it's a popular item. A lot of people talking about it in the comments.
Yeah, I should maybe try some hot honey and take that next time I go to the market. So,
there's probably right ways and wrong ways. I think if there's certain oils and liquids and things you got to watch out for fermentation and such. But I'm not a doctor and I can't give. I
will say that someone in here hit the I think the key to it is that the peppers are dry, so you don't have deal with the water content and stuff. Somebody mentioned that. Now, and ours, we were in Savannah. We tried a hot honey over there, and the guy told us his whole recipe. he raises his own peppers, dries his own peppers, blends them all up, and he does his own thing. But we actually ordered some peppers and kind of, but I think they need to be dry. I think that makes sense. And so that is one thing that my daughter used with some dry peppers. But
I have to check that out.
Anyway,
Brian
got me thinking.
Let's see what is going on with these things. Let's stop this. Stop this. There we go. Brian,
Frank,
what has been going on? Brian's been a busy beaver this week too, prepping for all kind of things and out there living your best life. Talk to us about what things have been like around Castle Hives up in Northeast Ohio this week.
Oh man, well, I had to get the haircut and I had to trim this up a little bit because there's family type stuff going on Friday. Friday, my daughter is getting married, so we will be officially empty nesters. Not that I'm counting down the time, but probably Friday at about 2:53 p.m. legally, she will be hitched, and then we will be empty nesters. Not that I'm counting down the minutes or anything like that, but yeah. So that's got us busy. But set aside from that, the apiary, Mark, thank you. The apiary is it's sitting pretty good. This is the first year that I kind of took a step back from wanting to push them for honey production, and I've been doing the DFM. I've been throwing the patties in them. I've been putting syrup on them in the summer here like this, and the colony sizes are larger than typically what I've seen at this point. So things are looking good. I've got a couple that superseded. So for some odd reason, they must have known something that I didn't. And it's fine. It's August, 14th now. And I found a virgin the other day. So it's like, that's fine. I look at it in that, well, I have a later summer queen that will hit her stride here soon. Hopefully they'll get mated. I had a colony that I did the blunder in my last video, and I wanted to see how much pressure you can apply to a queen bee's head in a one-handed queen catcher, and I found that the amount of pressure that my thumb applies is too much. So look at that.
Wow.
So, but that colony, when I opened it up, there were cells, so they're doing okay also, but the colonies are looking good. There's weight on some of them. I've got 3 colonies that I actually left 2 supers just because they were quite large. So I just wanted to let them have the room. And I'm looking at that in that, well, I'm going to have extra frames that I can divvy out and equalize when it gets to that point in the year. So right now, though, also, we know that the winter bees are important. But right now I'm looking at it in that my colonies are fairly strong. I need to do an August mite wash. Like I did some in July and they were good. So I'll do that. But I'm looking at the brood in there now as, well, this brood's going to emerge out and we're going to be closing in on September. So those will be raising the bees that are going to raise the winter bees. So it's almost like things are all, they're kind of lining up, and I think things are sitting in a good spot. So this year, I saw a quote the other day, and it said that, and I'm just paraphrasing, but it was something in regards to learning from our failures. And like several years ago, I learned from my failure. This year, with the honey harvest being a failure, I learned from it and kind of adjusted and adapted my supplements, how I go through the apiary. And I mean, it's been a plus. So, but things are good. And then I'm going to be down and I'm going to get some queens there. So we'll be good. We're going to turn the initial low that I was experiencing this season. Things are turning around. And I think going into August, it's looking good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think to quote the ancient Greek philosopher Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan till you get punched in the mouth.
That's it.
you know, and we all get punched in the mouth at different times of the year, it seems. And this has been kind of, I feel like, I'm trying to think, let's say who's on here tonight. If I can scroll through here, let's see. There's got to be some folks in here. Hey, Ian. Ian's been doing it long enough. He's been around the block, and he's been on the tractor long enough to know that not every farming year is the same. So I don't know why we expect beekeeping seasons to be uniform. But you at some point you want to believe that, hey, if I do these certain things, that the bees are going to react in this certain way, and we're going to achieve this certain outcome. And if I've learned anything, the only constant with beekeeping is change, and you got to just learn to roll with it, and kind of you've got to be flexible. Back many moons ago, back in the high school and late middle school into the high school and early adulthood life, I was in a couple bands, and the type of music that we played was always kind of jazz, fusion, improv type stuff, jam band type stuff. And I gravitated towards that from the very beginning, because I think if you learn to go with the flow literally, in all senses of the word, you're never caught in a position where you're caught so off guard or unexpected or by the short hair so bad that you just lock up, freeze up, can't make a decision, can't do anything. So beekeeping, I think, humbles you in a way to where you totally embrace this idea that we are not in control of these things. We can have influence over certain things, but what the reaction is, what the consequence is, are all these factors that are sometimes unpredictable. Hamburg Honey. So, Greg, did you play the cowbell? I did. Boy, I played the heck out of the cowbell. Man, always had my own solo we used to play Brian's favorite tune, "Don't Fear the Reaper," Blue Oyster Cult, and I was just going to town on that cowbell.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I did there, Brian. I brought it all together with Brian's social media post. But the reason I say all that is I was getting ready to say, wow, this has been a wacky, wild, zany year. And I'm thinking, why would you say that? Because every year's like that. Nope, there hasn't been a single year that's like, oh, hey, look at here. This year was in line with 2019 and partially of 2004. No, it's all different. What I have noticed is either I'm getting smarter, which that's questionable. I'm losing hair, that's for sure, and I'm getting grayer and grayer. But it seems as though I think your observational skills get honed every single year, and you're able to look at a situation and look and see what's going on and better understand what that is. And what I'm seeing this year is just like, okay, I'm seeing it. It's like, those like what do you call those movies that they're like the chick flick ones, not the comedies or the rom-coms, right? Where there's like there's couples therapy, right? And it's like, I hear you, I see you, right? That's what I feel like I'm saying with my bees. And what I mean by that is you get into the situation where we get all the supers off, great, right? And you're in this weird flex state, and you're thinking, okay, what do we do? Is it time to just treat and let them kind of just cruise until fall starts to creep on for the next flow? No, that hasn't been the case at all in Ohio. Pulled the main flow off, and there's been a steady trickle flow in. The difference is, because we were going for brood over honey, the bees were definitely continuing to slowly brood up, keep moving. Colonies that we didn't put any feed on, and just, okay, what's going to happen if we just let them go off the natural flow? They were really starting to, while they were making brood, it was at a very slow pace. Weren't really drawing supers, weren't drawing any extra comb, weren't doing any extra work for us to help us prepare to get into a good spot for next year. The colonies that I said, I see that there is some wet nectar in the frames. But when I get into these boxes, I see you guys paying attention to the upper nectar band on top of the frame and less occupied with all this brood in the frame. Let me go ahead and put some feed on there. We've been literally putting almost 1.5 gallons of feed on everybody for the last 4 weeks, and they've been taking it down. They're not plugged out, but what they're doing is they're utilizing that feed, and they're continuing to make brood, and they're continuing to grow, which is a massive asset for us. And now we're in a place where it's like, okay, we saw what the bees were doing. We made a choice. We've got a good outcome. Now what do we do? So now we're in like a late season planning mode. We're getting ready to get our insemination going for this year finally. And I'm thinking I'm going to just rather than break down the next, rather than make 60 or 70 splits with the ones that are just uber strong out there. I think what I'm going to do is just break those down into mating nukes for these inseminated queens, and then let them cruise, let them roll, use any extra brood just to kind of build everybody up, and then put us into a good spot, genetically speaking, for next year. But the season's not over. We can, I mean, we still have drones, lots of drones. So it's pretty interesting spot to be in this late in the year, where it feels like, oh, we should be slowing down. And we'll talk more some other time about some of the hiccups that we've had with all that. But what are you going to say, Brian?
I got something for you, Greg.
Okay.
So yesterday I go out just to check 2 colonies. One that I saw a virgin in, and then I wanted to check my resource colony, just one side of it, just to see. I had dropped cells in there just to see what it was doing. And when I opened up the first colony, I crack the super off, pull the excluder off, and what do I smell?
Goldenrod.
No. Already? Brian's
Now,
nasty gin drops.
Just a faint little bit of it.
Just a whiff.
It wasn't like, when you're in it, the whole entire apiary stinks like it. But it was just a faint smell of it. And I stood there for a second. I paused because I caught a whiff of it, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. It's August. So.
Well, it's that time. It's starting, isn't it? I mean, I believe he's probably listening. Mr. Ray Deese came out for a visit, had a great talk with him. Really appreciate him and that conversation that we had. But as he's here, I'm looking over. I've got all these visual indicators throughout the entire farm, certain groups of plants and trees and all of those things. And sure enough, goldenrod starting. It's the first round of it's on out this morning, choring the chickens. Sure enough, it's just out and it's vibrant. What I noticed, though, I should take a video. This first round of goldenrod, the bees will hit it and then almost fly right off. Like they're going it, and they have a way of saying, is there anything here? Nope. Okay, boom, we're out. So those next coming varietals, I think, will come in. So I think maybe they're bringing just a little bit of that in to where maybe you would smell that. But it's here we are. What I was telling Mr. Ray Deese is that God has given us some beautiful indicators if we're just wise enough to look at that. In the very beginning of the year, we see forsythia, and the old timers would say 3 snows after the forsythia blooms. It's because of the temperature patterns that we're having, and things can be shifting and changing. It's more like 2 snows and then forsythia. But when you see the forsythia right after those snows, it's okay, let's buckle up, let's get after it. Spring is here, let's get moving. And we start making those moves, getting everything ready. And sure enough, we jump right into the season. So that's the color yellow. And then God gives us yellow again at the end of the year. And those first flushes of goldenrod spring up, and you're thinking, okay, time to buckle up, time to get this plan in motion. There's no time to just be wishy-washy on what we're doing. We've got to put the plan together. We've got to execute. Buckle up. Here we go. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. So I wanted to get in, guys, and take some questions from our listeners tonight. Again, if you're joining us here on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel live, or if you're checking out the podcast replay later, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. Guys, I appreciate your guys' last week there, and it'll be interesting. These next series of stream team chats every week, and in the beginning of the season, we have this like intense build up, and so much happens. And then when we get late in the year like this, we're going to have like 4 to 6 weeks of really big strides, I think, that we all make in the yard to get ourselves in a good position for wintertime. So if you would, leave your questions in all caps, and we'll go ahead and we'll start in on that. Before we get to that, I want to remind folks that we just released the long-lost Fred Dunn interview, treatment-free with Fred Dunn. Now, I know it's been one of those things that we've talked about it, we've flirted with it. It's been a long time coming. Jake and I traveled clear up to the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, risking life and limb and shrew attacks to go visit with the shrew guru himself. And man, what a fantastic conversation it was. That was 2 years ago, guys. And what Fred and I were talking about 2 years ago could not be any better timed than right now, because right now is a time of year where everyone is like, you're right up against the wall. You're right up against the, okay, what did I do this year? Is it working? What about treatments? What about not treatments? What about genetics? What about this? What about that? And so I love Fred's approach in conversation. So be sure to check out. Now we've got the word podcast is interesting anymore, because YouTube has a podcast, kind of an option set up where you can go through and set a playlist up for podcasts, and you can kind of go through and check those out. But we also have the old format podcast where it's audio only, and you can find all that available on the Stitcher, Apple Podcast apps, all those things on your phone. We've got just search Nature's Image Farm, and wherever you get your regular podcasts at. And you can cruise back in time and check out all the stream team chats here on our channel, and lots of interviews, including one of my favorite conversations of all time, the long-lost treatment-free episode with Fred Dunn. So be sure to check that out. I've actually linked that here in the description below if you want to check it out. And then when you give that a listen, go over to Fred's YouTube channel and drop him a comment and tell him how much you appreciate hearing his point of view on the Nature's Image Farm podcast. Our pals Hamburg Honey just commented that Fred Dunn will be at Beak Meet 2025. I think that website, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is cwbees.com. Fred Dunn will be there. The stream team will be there. And Susie and I will be giving a talk on kind of beekeeping as a business for couples. You know, some of those hard lessons learned there. cwbees.com is going to be a great event. For all of our Learning Yard folks, reminder, we've got Learning Yard this Saturday with very special guests. Brian Koper is going to be there. So they're just Beekeeping 2025. Save the date, cwbees.com. But Brian over here is going to be joining us in the Learning Yard. And we're going to be digging into winter management, mite checks, mite treatments. It's going to be a lot of fun. I also believe Mr. Mike Art from Easy Ox may stop in too, and we're going to talk a lot. It's going to be a good time. We'll dig into some of those things. I just have a feeling tonight, for sure. So other than that, just some basic other quick announcements. We've got some new things added to the website at nature'simagefarm.com, including the brand new Hive Alive Hive tool. It is really cool. I think you'll like it. We've been using them and trialing them now for a few weeks. Look at that. Bruce has one. Look at this one out of the wrapper. Look at that. Look at the three amigos. Yeah. Look at that. None of us can get the Hive Alive name right there on the screen. There we go.
There we go.
But I'll tell you what I like about it is how thick it is. Let me grab.
Yeah. I like it, and you know the edge. It's on. Man, I hear an echo. Echo.
Me? Chat.
No, it's not me. I don't know.
What's going on here? Check this out, though. Look, here's my old trusty. I've managed to keep this Hive tool for probably 3 years. I don't know how I haven't lost it yet. You can see I've been busy today getting queen shipments out and marking everybody pink. But just one of the things that I did notice about these Hive tools, I don't know if this camera will it focus that close. Probably not. Is how thick. You probably can't see.
Yeah.
This is a waste of, but it is probably conservatively 20% thicker, and it really makes a difference when you're moving stuff around. You don't have any kind of hive tool flex, but pretty cool hive tool. The color scheme, I don't think you can lose it, no matter what color grass you're in. It's there, and I really am enjoying the ergonomics of that rascal. So you can check them out, naturesimagefarm.com.
Yeah.
Tonight, we're going to give one of these away, and so stay tuned for that, because we need your help. And whoever can guess what this mystery item is back here, what the name of it is, whoever can guess it right, we're going to send you a hive tool. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because everyone's going to be Googling it and figuring it out. But I don't know what it is. So any beekeeping historians, maybe you will. So outside of that, let's get into some of these questions. And I want to thank Castle Hives. Brian, thank you for your $20 super chat. Local Buzz LLC, Straight Creek Apiary, Brian G. Thank you for your $5 super sticker. And look at this, Mac Apiary Bees, Mr. Tom. Tom became a YouTube member. Tom, thanks for joining our channel. I hope you're having a good season down there. And I think is it the Cincinnati area, or maybe it's the southwest corner, somewhere down south of Columbus. Tom, hope you're having a good season there. And Bruce, hashtag Stream Team, hashtag Be the Lighthouse. Thank you for your super chat. So with that, let's go ahead and get into some questions here. The first question, and again, reminder, leave your questions in all caps so we can kind of easily filter and see them. And then any of the super chats are automatically starred, and they go right into our feed there too. So we appreciate if you can do that. Hamburg Honey, Mr. Mike Lawrence. What does everyone do for chalk brood? We have 3 colonies of 75 that won't shake it. Replaced queens and some frames. I've got a little experience with this. Brian, have you have any experience with chalk brood?
Never had
Bruce?
I've seen a little bit. I've never really. It usually kind of clears up on its own, it seems like.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen much of it at all that I know of, or at least not recognized it.
Okay. We've gone. I don't want to go down memory lane again, but we've told the story quite a few times where we were helping a friend requeen a bunch of his colonies for his sons. He brought the nukes here that he had bought, and the nukes were just sicker than a dog. It was one of those synergistic toxicity scenarios, and we didn't know it at the time, but that's what we had figured out later. What we were seeing is all kind of things, but we were also seeing chalk brood in there. And for me, what it looked like is the pupae would get this, the larvae would kind of go into this discolored, dried up. They looked like I'm trying to think what those were in. I think there used to be these little ice cream cups when I was a kid, maybe at the fairs, not quite like Dippin' Dots, but you would peel off the ice cream top, and there would be like these round disc, like waferly sprinkle type things in there. With chalk brood, at least when I have seen it, that's what it looks like all over the bottom board. Is it's almost as though the larvae dehydrates, turns into this chalky nastiness, and then the bees start dragging all of that out, and you kind of see it building up all over the bottom. Now, the only time I have ever seen this, and I don't know if this is a play for you or not, Mike and Lori, but it was only occurring in jester nuke boxes. And these jester nuke boxes were being used to raise bees in. And if there's jester nuke boxes are fantastic for transport boxes. They're great to have on hand to make quick splits or to move some bees around, but they're not good at raising bees in. They get filthy, and all that corrugation, it seems to just hold an enormous amount of water. If you've ever picked one up and shook it, it just rains for days. Now, somehow, I don't know how that water gets inside of those jester nukes, but I think they sweat. They don't breathe. And I think the high moisture, the high humidity that helps, I think that ends up being a breeding ground for that. So Mike, Hamburg Honey, what we had did to turn, we got rid of all the chalk brood. but we were getting rid of some other things too. What we did is we put on strong microbial super DFM. We sprinkled that on everybody. We gave everybody a gallon of syrup with Hive Alive in it for the thymol. And a lot of those colonies, they were getting oxalic acid at first, and then small doses of Apigard. And so many of those turned the corner. And the reason that I think they turned the corner is, number one, somehow the probiotic was helping them in that stage. And I think the thymol was helping with their gut biome. Thymol also, I believe, being antiviral, I think is helping them kind of shake that. And I don't want to say it was sanitizing the colony, but I really do think it was helping. So Mike, maybe give that a shot, depending on how big these colonies are. Maybe look at gut health for these bees. Think about maybe some Hive Alive additive to your syrup, possibly an Apigard treatment. You got to be careful combining the both, feeding liquid and putting Apigard on at the same time. But maybe that will help. If anyone here in the comments, if you've dealt with chalk brood and you've had good luck getting rid of it, leave us some comments here to Mike at Hamburg Honey and see what maybe he can do to help with that. So great question.
Yeah. He did mention that it's been wet there, very wet. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. I've never
probably.
I think I've had a little bit, but I've never really. Usually a healthy, strong colony they kind of take care of it. It seems like, but if it's been wet there, that's puts two and two together from what you're saying and from what he's saying. Maybe that has something to do with it as well.
And I think early in the season when it's cool and it's wet, I think it's a nightmare. So them, Mike and Lori being up in Wisconsin, I mean, that's a whole other. I wouldn't even. We know what the early part of the year is like up there. We're going to find out what January looks like in Wisconsin this year, aren't we, guys? That'll be fun. Can you guys see us out there, really roughing it on the ice inside of an ice hut at 60 degrees, drinking coffee, pulling fish out of a hole? That wouldn't be too bad, would it?
Not too bad. So,
well, Mike, let us know what you turn up there. Let's see. We got a question here from Mr. Roy Pro. What depth shim do you use for treating with Apigard? Fantastic question. Now, Bruce, I know you're primarily an Apivar guy. I know, Brian, you're also Apivar. Have you guys delved into the world of Apigard? No?
I used it once and it was fine. I did a couple of years ago. I'm guessing you'd have a similar depth of shim as you would for pollen patties, but I don't know, Greg. You're the pro in that area.
Well, historically, what we have done is, Brian, check your mic there.
It's like I've never done this before.
Hey,
my experience with Apigard, is it's been when I go down and visit somebody, and they bark orders, and they make me go out into their yard and put it on, and so I don't know shim thickness because all that I'm told is put this on and then do this. So I listen, and then I tried to walk away, and I jumped on top of a hive body. Remember that? And I got pushed off.
That's right.
So I have no experience.
The duo. Yeah. In the past, when we have the thing about Apigard, first I'll say the label is the law. When you read the label, I'll say this. Did you know that the instructions they're not different, but there is more detail in the instructions on the buckets of Apigard as compared to the trays of Apigard. The instructions that are in the trays of Apigard are a little different than the instructions on the bucket. Now, it's not a make or break, because if you're using the trays, then the application and use of buckets are probably no factor. So with the Apigard in tubs, or if we're going to be for folks that are treating 30 colonies, a tub thereabouts, if you're treating smaller colonies, then there's lower dosage amounts, even lower dosage recommendation for what they call nuclei or wintering colonies, so smaller colonies going into the wintertime. And I'll just say be very careful, because we found out that 5-frame nukes at those recommended dosages, 5-framers and 5/5s. You talk about, have you ever lost 118 nukes that you were planning on selling for the next year because nearly every single one of them absconded due to Apigard?
Nope.
Not a good conversation at the dinner table. How was your day, honey? Well, that extra, $24,000 that we were hoping to maybe put into use for improvements for the farm next year. Yep. Well, that's not going to happen. What? So we've learned to. I really won't put Apigard on anything smaller. Then it's got to be 7 to 8 really good frames of bees. Not too much different than actually Formic. And Tom Nolan with Formic, has said right around you want 8 strong frames of bees plus. And I think that's solid information there. What we used to do in the past, Roy, is just put a 3/4 inch shim on top of the colony, and then put our regular migratory lid on. That would give them enough space. What we have done since then is, rather than fooling with shims, in all of our migratory lids, we build a 1/2 inch patty rim. So on our website, you'll see our 10-frame migratory lids with the patty rim built in, wax dipped. Anyone who has those, you'll know what I'm talking about. The 1/2 inch seems to be plenty for that. When you figure the little bit of space above the top of the frame to the top part of the box, plus the 1/2 inch built in the patty rim of the lid, it seems to be plenty of space for the bees to get up in there and to drag those crystals out and have air flowing over the top of it. Where the application is different is, early on in using Apigard, we would try to just put it in between boxes above the brood, and it was a nightmare. There just wasn't enough space. And even with using the cards and the gel, there's just not enough space there. It gets squished up onto the frames, and that didn't quite work out real well. Just squirting it on the frame rest at the end of the frames, at the front or the leading edge of the box, that didn't work out so good. Using the cards worked great, but what we had found is just putting it at the uppermost area of the colony worked great, and then just put a shim or a lid on, and it worked good. So what depth shim do you use for treating with Apigard? I think you want a 1/2 inch at least, 1/2 inch to 3/4. If you've got an 1.5 inch or a 2 inch shim that you use for, maybe if you make fondant or sugar bricks or something, I think that would work fine too. What I didn't like was putting the shim between the brood boxes and then putting the Apigard on, because what those knuckleheads eventually did is just, if that treatment stays on for 14 days, when the queen shuts down and stops laying because of the treatment, which she will, it seems like the bees were just, what else are we going to do with our day? Let's build bird comb. And so they build tons of bird comb in between those boxes. So I put it on top and don't put that shim in between there. So I hope that helps you with that question there, Roy. Fellows, it's that time where summer treatments are a big deal. Keeping things clean right now is sort of important. And let's just quickly go around the horn here, and we'll take more questions. Bruce, what are you doing right now for mite treatment late summer in Alabama?
Right now I'm taking off my Apivar. So I put it in, we had our honey crop is done by the very first part of July. And so hopefully I have them all treated very quickly after that. So now we're at the end of that 6 to 8 weeks, and I'm taking the Apivar out, and I'm assessing the mites. So we're really not treating actively right now. In the past, I have treated actively in August, but I got it on there sooner this year, which I needed to. And the results in the few colonies I've done mite washes on so far, the results were a huge knockdown, but not 100% with the Apivar. And I think I just tested 3 or 4 colonies before I had to go the other day. Got them down to, I think most of them had 2 or 3 mites, 2, 3, and I think one had 4 mites, but some of those had like 40 something. I mean, they were ridiculous. One of them was ridiculously infested.
Wow.
The one that had 40 something was down to like 3 or 4. So, it really, that colony's not looking great because they may have already had issues before I ever put the mite treatment in, but it did it knocked them way down. But I've still got more tests to do, more testing to do. But I'm pulling those strips out right now from the post summer harvest. So I'll probably, getting into September, October, man, it's like, do you want to use the aggressive stuff with winter coming in? Like the Formic Pro or the Apiguard that kind of shuts the queen down. Do you want to use oxalic acid vapor down here? We still have a lot of brood in the colonies. So, in the past, I've just hit them with oxalic acid vapor over and over and over and over again throughout the 3 to 4 times a month, honestly, through until spring, because we never go broodless down here completely. And last year I used some Formic Pro in the fall, and I think it really kind of slowed those colonies down, because it was, I don't know if you really want to be shutting the queen down right at the end of fall. You want her to kind of slow down naturally. At least that's kind of what I've gathered. The previous year, that's when I treated with Apiguard, same result. It was like September, October. So I don't know, man. I don't want to put Apivar in again. And it's, for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't want to just hit them with that all the time, because I'm afraid, they'll become resistant to it. The mites will. Number two, it's very expensive. And if I really felt like I needed to, I would, but I think I'd rather hit them with something different. I may just go with OAV or try an alternative treatment here in a month or two, but I'm going to kind of take the strips out, leave them alone for a month or two, and then just assess what I need to do from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't believe you had 40 to start with, and being knocked down to 4 or 6 now. I mean, that's a pretty big.
Well, the test that Auburn did, it went from whatever that highest count was in the 40s or whatever, maybe it was in the 50s, all the way down to 0. So I knew that those mites were resistant to it, but that's a pretty big knockdown, especially this time of the year, when they should be peaking the mites. Now they're knocked way down. So hopefully we've got a head start on it. I've never treated really that early. It's always been a couple of weeks later, even into August, before I treated. And so I feel like I got on them quicker this year than usual, at least by a week or two, if not even a month. So we'll see what happens.
I think that's a good move, because I think for a lot of us, spring was probably 3-4 weeks early from what it was even last year, it seemed. And that makes a big deal, because everything's on an earlier pace. So where you may feel like, usually I'm not, I'm mid-September before I'm polishing up my final mite plans. You really need to be in the first part of August and mid-August, making those moves, making those things happen. So you're way ahead of the game. I think it's a smart idea to be treating the bees now, and take the brood loss now, just before they start to really get hot and heavy making the winter bees. Now they get cleaned up, and it seems like after these rounds of treatments, the bees, they kind of catch a second wind, and they start to go hot and heavy again. So for me, it's better to treat earlier, get those mites knocked down if you've got them, and then if it slows the queens down, great. When she gets caught back up and everything's cleaned up, now they're making the winter bees, and they can cruise through the fall. And if you're doing anything, it's just maintenance treatments with OA. And I think that's about where you're at there. Brian, what are you doing right now as far as mite management?
That's going to be it. So next time I go over, I'm thinking it's looking like Sunday. I'm going to get my washes done just to know where I'm sitting at, and just with the temps, because like right now it's hot, so I'm not going to play around with certain treatments. I've already used Apivar once this year, so that won't go on. Again, right now, just like Bruce said, I don't want to continuously use it so that they build up any type of resistance. So it'll be OA. I'll go over, I'll get my instant vape if they need it. Typically what I've done in the past is August has been my OA month, where I'll go every 4 to 5 days and hit them so that they get like 4 or 5 rounds in, just so that I get a complete brood cycle plus a couple. That way, if there's any mites below the cappings, I'm getting everything. So that's typically my plan, is what I do.
Yeah. Well, I know, Brian, you and I are going to talk a lot more about this this Saturday at the Learning Yard. For any of our Learning Yard crowd, we're gonna dig into a lot of this on Saturday. And I think that's the thing to consider, is you've got to know what your counts are, or whatever your metric is, whatever you're using to create a baseline. There's a few different ways you can do that. they all kind of tell you a little bit of a different story, but do something to create a baseline so you can make sure that whatever your approach is effective, and then also do that post-treatment wash so you have kind of that finish line number, so you can say, hey, these colonies went into the winter at a 1%, they did great. Or if there's some that went in with a 4% and they crash, that gives you a really good point of reference for next year on when to take action, how to take action, what to look out for. It's so wild out here when you start getting into genetics and seeing what the bees are doing kind of on their own. We had these FF0s, or the parental line of these VSH virgins that we mated here with our stock, and they've always had low mite numbers or low mite counts. Their daughters, however, they completely lose all of that hygienic behavior, and the one in that yard was throwing 40 mites probably 3 weeks ago. This week I'm going to get in there and do another wash, see what they're looking like, see if they're still moving forward, because I think there's actually some valuable information to gather from that. And what's interesting, we talked about it with Randy Oliver, is you always think the grass is greener on the other side. Turns out our running line stock that we've been running here and really digging in to put together has just as low mite washes as the hygienic line did. So it's like the grass necessarily isn't always greener on the other side. So what we were trying to bring in for even more hygienic behavior ended up all that it would have really done was brought in some really bad attitudes that we would have had to spend a long time trying to get those attributes out. But that's the fun and interesting maze of queen breeding is sorting through all of this to try to put the best foot forward every single year. So because of that, we really have been very we haven't had to do a lot of treatment at all this year. Some colonies that haven't been treated in probably 2-3 years. We have some that need knocked back. So their approach is going to be a little different for everybody, depending on your genetic line, how much brood, where you're at in the season. Do you have supers? What are your temps during this treatment period? We're going to talk a lot more about that this Saturday at the Learning Yard. That's going to be a lot of fun. Let's take some more questions here. Quickly, let's go back to this quickly. Hamburg Honey, Mike Lawrence says, I spoke to the company that produces Apiguard. He says 25 grams is the max for a nuke. Mike, I would highly encourage you to take a look at the installation instructions on the tubs of Apiguard, because on nuke colonies and overwintering colonies, they actually recommend, I think it's 10 to 17 grams. While that might not seem like a super huge difference, it is. We were putting on 12 grams on the 5-frame boxes and the 5/5s, and it was running them clear out of the boxes. So keep in mind that if you are going to use 25 grams as the dose, we use 25 grams as the dose on 10-frame singles. If the temperature is getting 84, 85 degrees or hotter, we cut our dosage back on Apiguard when it's warmer. If it's high 70s, low 80s, then we'll give them the full 50-gram dose twice. But just keep that in mind. It's one of those things where you don't want anyone to learn that the hard way, but everyone's bees and ventilation and boxes and temperature and weather is going to be just a little bit different. Okay. We got a question for Bruce here from Brittany Cheryl. Hey, Bruce, when do you start getting into your hives at the end of winter?
I'm honestly in them off and on throughout the winter. I peek in throughout the winter as far as actually going through them. If I don't see a problem, I don't break into them much. Probably mid to late January, I start peeking in and going through them pretty good. If it's, seeing what's going on down here. If it's warm, it starts warming up in January sometimes. We may start having swarms into January. That happened this year, I think. And I did splits in February this year. So really, there is no completely downtime. There's no time when the bees completely shut down here in Alabama. There's brood in the colonies pretty much all year. I've had a few bees in the past that were maybe Carniolan or Caucasian type genetic lines that shut way down, brood way back. But most of my bees, Brian, Greg, you guys have seen my videos and everybody else has watched where I'll have bees throughout the wintertime that have a very high population. They never brood completely back. And so, I got to check on them. I mostly just treat with the oxalic acid vapor throughout the winter. That's what I've done for the past few years, just hit them a lot. And if I'm in the bee yard, I see anything that looks off base, or I may crack open a lid or two just to see how they look or just peek in on them. I don't worry too much about propolis seals and that kind of thing down here as much in the winter because it just doesn't stay cold like for weeks on end. Like we have a couple of pretty cold days where it's in the teens or 20s, but within a week we're usually up in the 50s. And so it's never a super dangerous thing, I think, to peek in on them down here in Alabama. It's South Alabama where I'm at. So, but I really start getting them in earnest and really trying to start doing hive management, really checking on them pretty consistently. I would say if it's cold in January, let's just say mid to late January into February is when I start doing it. So that's kind of what I do. It's way, way different than it is up north where you guys just shut them down for a few months.
Awesome. We got a question from Mark Bassinger. Speaking of Mark Basinger, I'm not sure how you say your last name, Mark, but Mark, I know who you are. He asks, what to plant to help bees later in the season? That's definitely an interesting question. What do you guys think? Is there anything that you can plant the bees to really help them later in the season?
I mean, I thought people we plant buckwheat. I think that's a late season type bloom. We have a lot of cotton around here, which gets me through. Right now, the cotton is blooming; it's everywhere. And so, if you got bees within a flight distance of cotton, you're in pretty good shape. Assuming it's rained enough and it's not super dry, or the cotton is irrigated. Now, if it's dry, or I think even in certain types of soils, I'm not sure what those are, but it may not produce as much. And then we're going to have goldenrod and fall honey kicking in pretty soon, or a fall flow, hopefully a little bit. So I don't worry too much about that, but I know some people will plant buckwheat. We actually had someone down here. It was a yellow flower. It may have been canola. We don't see a lot of canola down here, but several years ago, there was a beautiful field of just a beautiful yellow flower. I think it may have been canola, but they haven't planted since. That's probably been 6-8 years ago, 4 or 5 acres of that, but it wasn't anywhere close to my bees. But I don't know. That's just what I would say. The only thing that I know of people down here, I think, plant a little bit is that buckwheat.
Yeah. What do you think, Brian?
I've never messed with that. I know the farmer guy where I had some colonies at before, he tried planting buckwheat 2 or so years ago, and he had such a poor take with the seed that he put in. I don't know where he got the seed, and I don't know like what conditions you have to plant buckwheat, because like up here you rarely see it. If somebody says they're planting buckwheat, I'm just like, what? Really?
Yeah.
You don't see it up here.
No, I don't know.
I
I wouldn't recognize if I saw it. I wouldn't recognize it. I've never had buckwheat or tried to plant it.
It's a neat plant, and it self seeds back a pretty decent amount by itself. You let it go to seed, the seed falls. It has one more round. I think it's like a 30 to 40 day maturity from the time that you seed it till it's flowering. For a lot of varieties of buckwheat. Wow. The thing about it is there's somebody way smarter than us that knows this, but isn't it something like 5,000 it takes like over 5,000 flowers to produce an ounce of honey? If you need that many flowers to create just an ounce of honey, what would it take to create 1 3-pound frame of honey or pollen? I think you're getting into acres and acres of anything to really start to make any kind of a difference. Right. Now, Mark, I'm just saying, if you happen to know any, let's say, wildlife officers, and you happen to know where all the sweet spots are for deer, there's a really good chance if you're in buck country, you're probably going to be in very good fall forage country, where you're going to be sitting on a lot of white clover. I think white clover is probably, if someone was going to plant something, it's the seed's a little expensive, but I think you get what you pay. One of the biggest here at the farm, we have no issue running probably more colonies than most folks can in the same area because of our terrain, the hillsides here, the type of flora and fauna, the forage that's here. There's a lot of it, especially late in the fall. It's this extreme abundance. We're so blessed in that. But there's there's a carpets of white clover out here all the time. If I were to go in right now and just mow down all of what folks would look and say is weeds, if I would mow down all of the ironweed and all the emerging goldenrod, and I would maintain a carpet out here, if I maintain a knee to ankle high carpet of forage out here, we would be very, very dense in white clover. So much white clover that I was actually afraid at one point that maybe it was too much white clover when we did have cows out here, that their pats would be a little too loose. So not that they would be bloating on it, but they had looser pats when they would get into the clover patches. So it's one thing to step into a nice firm cow pat. It's one thing to slip in a greasy, wet, loose cow pat. Anyways, that's a story for another day. But great question. We've got a giveaway coming up here, and Mark Basinger has something to do with that too. So we'll get into that here just a little bit. And then a couple quick follow-ups on, we're talking about the treatments there. And our buddy Brian over at Flower Street Farms, he has some of our wax dip lids with the shims built in, and he's a big fan. So Brian, we really appreciate you. And Brian Lee, Big B Lee, one of our favorites, says he also uses the migratory lids from us. It's got a 1/2-inch shim there. And yeah, I think somebody mentioned, there it is. Look at that leather patch from B Lee Custom Designs Emporium LLC Incorporated. So there was one other comment I was going to make there. Go ahead.
I love those migratory lids with shims on them. I have a couple of yours, Greg. I also have just other companies. I've just gotten, if I get lids, typically nowadays I like them to have a patty rim.
Yep.
I like it for a couple of reasons, just in case I want to put, Hive Alive fondant patties on there. If I want to put pollen patties, which I don't use much because we have a lot of pollen, we're rich in pollen resources down here. Apiguard, I mean, there's so many reasons to use them. And then I don't mind they build that burr comb in there. I can scrape it off. That's a great source for wax. I mean, it's usually white and pretty, if you just let them build it. So it's like, it really doesn't bother me that much to have a little space up there where we put some wax in there. But I love the patty rims, and I use it. All my lids don't have those, but that's whenever I buy new stuff, I pretty much try to get with the patty rims on there nowadays.
It's a really popular approach with a lot of commercial beekeepers. When I was down visiting with Chris Werner, he's got patty rims. Brett 80, I think probably the largest beekeeper in the country. All of his lids, he even has 3/4 rims on his. And the thing about guys who are using patty rims on their lids is, yeah, the bees may build burr comb up there, but if the bees are up in the lid building burr comb, they probably needed a box last week or the week before. So that's usually a timing issue. And then some of the guys actually really love to have the patty rims towards pollination season, because as those bees are getting juiced up and getting built up and they're starting to draw wax and get up where they need that extra box before transport, going up there and drawing a little burr comb is pretty handy to glue the lid down to the boxes for transportation too. So it's not necessarily it's not a bad thing. Everything's a managed thing. But to not, I absolutely hate fooling with shims. No matter what you do, I just hate fooling with shims. It's one other tiny, ridiculous piece of equipment that has to get stacked, has to go onto a skid, has to get wrapped, has to get moved, has to go here. It's just one more thing. So I'm a big fan of having the patty rim on the lids there too. I've got a question here from, did I miss that one? Here we go. Ina Woodard. Okay, so I haven't been in my bee yard all summer. What should I be looking for? That is a fantastic question, because Ina, as guilty as you may feel, you are not alone. And I can 100% say that there are a lot of folks that are in that same spot. Whether it was time commitments, life happens, health, time, all these things happen. And so if you're in that scenario, what do you do, Bruce? What would you tell somebody that you were mentoring, who, if they hadn't got into their colonies all summer, what should they be looking for right now? Hot tips.
Well, I think it's just kind of what you always look for. You're just gonna have to make a lot more assessment. I think if you haven't been in the colony in several months. It's different than if you looked in the colony a week or two ago, because you know kind of where they were. These bees have gone all summer without any intervention, and so they've just been doing their thing, and it's almost they've been completely living their natural lives, and they haven't had to, contend with you, and you haven't contended with them. So I would first of all, if there's a strong colony, the boxes are probably glued together quite firmly, so it's going to be some work to get them apart. You'll probably have to do some prying to get the frames out, and be careful, getting the frames out. But I would probably do a pretty thorough inspection. I'd pull the lid off and, burr comb, try to scrape that off, and just kind of start going through the colony frame by frame. Probably start on the outside and just kind of gently try to, as best you can, get the frames out. It depends on how deep the colony is. If it's a double deep or multiple boxes, you're going to have to really work on. I would probably try to maybe even pry the boxes apart a little bit before you start pulling frames out, because if they're wooden frames, you may pull some frames apart if they've been glued down from the burr comb from below. Just a couple of things I would do, but really you just treat it like any other assessment. Now, if you haven't been in them, if you're really trying to figure out your situation, how healthy the bees are, you may want to do a mite check, get your alcohol wash out, do a mite check, and just frame by frame, just do an assessment of the colony and see where they're at. They may be in perfect shape. You may not have to do anything, but you may run into some problems, and it's just it's going to be just a matter of getting in there and seeing what you have.
That's great. Brian, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I would do a lot of the similar. Probably what you can do first off is if you just sit back and you watch your entrance, that's going to tell you a lot of, you'll see a lot of signs. You'll know from activity, things like that, how large of a colony it is. Because I saw DC say, well, you want to check first that you have live bees. So that's going to tell you that.
First, absolutely, yeah.
Also, if your colony's pretty large, if you see a lot of activity, well, it's probably brooded up. But, getting into it, making sure they're queen right, doing a mite wash also, because if you have a mite bomb that's going to occur, I would get that under control. So just checking, really, I think the two in here that I've seen, queen status there, making sure the colony's built up and should be colony size where you want it at this time of the year, and then doing those mite checks. You can also check the weight. If they don't have a lot of weight on them and you're in the dearth, well, you might want to get some supplements on them. So,
absolutely.
That's what I would do.
Yep. I'm with you. The only thing that I would say is if you hadn't been in them all summer, and let's say you were in them on the spring, they probably ran out of room. They probably did swarm. They probably have a fresh queen in there. So keep that in mind. The main thing to look for, like they said, are you queen right? Do you have brood? Are they out of room? Because they're very likely, depending on where you're at, they're going to need to put a little extra on for the wintertime. So get in there, make sure, see if they need that extra super, and then let them roll. So do your mite counts, kind of see where you're at. Bruce made a very good recommendation there that, not that Brian didn't, but Bruce, you hit on something there that it's one of those ask me how I know is, have you ever had one of those colonies that's like, I'll get around to you later. I'll get around to you later. I'll get around to you later. And it's one of those ones that it's one of those never get around to them later colonies. And you finally get around to them, and you go to start to open that rascal up, and everything's glued down tight. And you're thinking, oh my gosh. What Bruce mentioned there, getting that thing loosened up and manipulated now before it see Brian, see what we're doing there. Great minds think alike. What I was going to do is warn you. I would highly recommend that you do not go in there right away with leverage and just start janking on those top bars and yanking them rascals out, because you will find that there is more leverage in this tool than those frames can withstand. Even if they are glued, screwed, stapled, duct taped, JB welded, you name it, you'll bust them loose. So use this handy point of leverage here to go in between the frames and loosen them up, and then come in there with your hook and pop them up, and then get everything cleaned up.
It's also a good idea, I think, if it's been a long time, maybe to go ahead and try and loosen the top box. Go in between the boxes a little bit, loosen them up. If you can do that, because You can try pulling frames out. They come out fairly easy. That's one thing. But if it's totally glued down, you might want to kind of separate some of those frames because you'll just yank those bottom bars off if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And also,
Especially if
Greg,
you do
you
it
mentioned something really important because you don't always the frames don't always come apart. Sometimes the end bars will just break off if you pry too hard. You'll splinter that wood right off, and it'll break right off of there.
I found this year I've put just a smidge bit of extra time when I'm putting a hive back together. And what I've done is I've wanted to always make sure that my bee space was correct. And by having my bee space correct, the next time I go in, it does help you because you have typically the same amount of space on each end. So it allows you, the ability to pry that end frame easier. I didn't always put time into that. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it, but making sure that bee space is correct, it's going to save you that if you do have times like this where it's a month, 2 months, at least it's going to give you a little bit of room where you can pry and do things like that. And
truth be told, I want colonies that are gluing things down. I want propolis everywhere. I want them to be doing that work. We're gonna have a giveaway tonight. You have to guess what one of these items is. For right now though, this is not it. But this is one of those. Hey, do you want to see something cool that most folks have never seen before? A piece of beekeeping equipment that probably no one's ever seen. Let me grab it. It's right here.
Huh.
I have no idea
what that is.
Those are headphones. What do you use those for? Oh, wait a minute. That's not what you're talking about.
What do bees use headphones?
Oh, come on now, Bruce. Okay, you ready? Here, let me pull it out of my hat. You ready? Here it is. Ready? Gotcha. No, just kidding. All right, so take a look at this frame here. Let's see if I can catch it in my side light. So can you see the contour of these sidebars?
Oh.
They actually come to a point rather than being square. Like this backside is a little bit wore off. There's not much there. See how it's flat right here? Okay. The opposing side is beveled. You see that? That is really cool. And the idea was, let's see if we come up here. There you go. There's a profile up here.
Yeah.
The idea is so that the sidebars aren't flat and stuck together. So the idea was to have less propylene. So what's cool about a really old frame like this, and so the top, this was it has a cleat. It's got a wedge top.
Interesting.
Okay, and then what about the bottom? Nothing on the bottom, just a solid bottom. It's not a split bottom. It's not a groove bottom. It's just solid bottom here. Oh, that one's coming out of there. And so it looks like it's got an old staple.
Is that for a foundationless frame, do you think, if it had the cleat at top?
Well, I don't know. It has holes on the side for crosswire.
Oh, okay.
But just a really neat frame. But I thought that was cool. I don't know, you don't see that really often. What I'm going to show you a little bit later here is 10 times cooler than that.
Oh, boy.
So hang tight. And whoever can guess whatever this really super cool thing is, we're going to give you a new Hive Alive Hive tool. You want to learn more about those, you can go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com. Really cool. So let's take a couple more questions here. Let's see. From Peabody's Apiary. Got a question for you, Greg. When do you switch to thicker feed for winter stores? Labor Day? Also, how many gallons to get them to weight? I run singles, and 4 gallons get them heavy. I'm in Maryland. That's a fantastic question. You're not going to like my answer. And I would say that my answer is probably a little contrary, believe it or not. What if I told you I don't thin my feed down ever? And what if I told you that my feed's 3-to-1 in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall? What I have found is that do the bees do a little better at drawing comb on thinner syrup? I'm not going to argue with folks that say that it does. What I can say is that feeding ProSweet straight, the bees draw all the comb out every single year that I need. The queens are stimulated and brood I'm always trying to keep up with the bees, and they are always able to store anything that I put on them. Now, you ask a great question here. You run singles, and it seems that 4 gallons gets them heavy, and you're in Maryland. Now, here's something to consider. What I have noticed when we have trialed thicker feed versus thinner feed, typically, if we mix something like a 1.5 to 1 or a 1 to 1, those colonies will use 2 to 3 times the volume as colonies that are using just a straight 3 to 1. So a colony that maybe takes them 10 days or 12 days to suck down a gallon of 3 to 1, similar strength, genetics, configurations in the same yard, all those things, those comparative colonies can take down at least 2 gallons and sometimes 3 of a 1 to 1 or a thin feed. So keep that in mind. I think there is something about the feed concentration, how they utilize that, what they're able to do with it. But ProSweet is in its own little, I don't want to say magic category by itself, but it's in a scenario where it's an invert sugar. The bees are able to metabolize that way faster, put it to work. So I think that they work and do a little different on that than they would just a straight granulated sugar that you're mixing. So how many gallons to get them to weight? You know, for us right now, the bees that are that we have split out, they were nukes. We pulled queens out, and we've interrupted this brood cycle over and over again, and they're in this hungry, growing state. A lot of those have had 3 gallons up till now. Jake will put another gallon on them in the morning, and they'll likely get maybe 1 more gallon of that. So some of these colonies are going to get about 5 gallons of feed to get them where we want, and that's getting the production, this extra production out of them. If we would have cut that back, not been pulling so many nukes out of them, not have been pulling so many queens out of them, letting them just cruise, build, have the field force, you know, they maybe wouldn't have needed all that. But for us, it's a happy medium. So I hope that helps answer your question. Feed density is a big deal, and it does matter. And for us, if we can save the extra 2 or 3 trips out to feed the same colony by feeding them a thicker syrup, and they're doing all the things we need them to do, to me, that seems to be a good net win. Catherine asks, I need to requeen my swarm. Any suggestions on the most effective way during a dearth? Fellas, what do you think? Brian, if you were going to requeen a swarm, hey, Brian laughs. Maybe we should come back to Brian. Brian, if you were going to requeen a swarm, any suggestions on the most effective way during a dearth?
Bruce, what do you think?
Moving right along. Bruce, how would you do
Well,
that?
I do know that it's difficult to requeen during a dearth. Ask me how I know, because last year I had a really rough experience trying to do that. So I would say, number one, you want to feed them. Actively be feeding them when you actually put that queen in there.
Yeah.
Might be a good idea to be feeding all your bees if there are more than one hive in that area, so they don't start to try to rob. Just make sure your bees are happy when you put the queen in there. Otherwise, the acceptance rate will be much less. So I think that's going to be the key, in my opinion, Greg. I just think that's last year. I mean, I've known this all along, but last year I learned my lesson the hard way by trying to do a bunch of splits and introduce a bunch of queens right in the middle of a dearth, and it didn't work out very well. So just I would say be sure you're feeding them actively while you put the queen in there.
Yeah, I think that's I don't think dearth feeding is a big secret, but if we were to ask, Brian, what your favorite way to requeen colonies are, he would say.
What's your favorite way to mark queens, Brian?
Brian, what's the best way to mark queens?
I have a one-handed queen head lopper.
Join us this Saturday, Nature's Image Farm, for the Brian Koper Castle Hives How to Mark a Queen series.
Yes.
We should. Wouldn't that be a fun? That'd be a fun blooper. Is you remember that time at the learning yard here where and Bruce has done it. Bruce has a big red. I had a pretty pink, the same thing or whatever color it was that year.
Yeah.
Brian's decapitated. I mean,
well, no. She wasn't decapitated when I did it.
Oh, okay.
She went into almost like a fetal position and had a certain shake.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to throw this out there. It's only happened to me, I think, only one time this year. It does happen. When you mark a bunch of queens, you inherently run into this. I have queens. I have seen queens. This year it was only one so far. As soon as I pick her up, I've got her held comfortably, and I go to mark her. As soon as I touch her, doesn't matter what type of marking pen it was, but as soon as you touch her, they're like those fainting goats. They just go
Faint.
and they curl up, and some of them have twitched, and they just sit there and they do that thing, and
Really?
I'm thinking, what in the world? And at first I'm thinking, oh no, what did I do? Was I too rough? Was I too hard? And so over time, eventually I figured out I used to just put them into a cage. It was I think it was last year or the year before I really learned, because I put it into a cage and then I put attendants in there, and then I stuck it into the grafting shack and left it, and came back like 3 days later. I forgot about it. I came in there to grab some more queen cages, and I heard the cage buzzing from across the room. And I look over, and all the bees are in there running around, including the queen. She was a resurrected queen. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on here? Turns out it's very rare, but it's not super rare for those who handle queens all the time. So Brian, I'm not saying that your queen was still living.
Yeah, she was.
She won't have the guts to do that again, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the hospital, we would say that she was without vital signs.
She was without vitals. All right. There you go. Well,
She was deceased. Belly up.
Yeah.
She was
there it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Catherine, a great question to throw Brian under the bus. So thanks for that. But the most effective way during a dearth, I am not afraid to requeen during a dearth, because we typically are making sure that we are on top of the feeding game. I think you got to be careful when you start getting into requeening and making splits on colonies that are too lean in nutrition. They just get to be a little bit agitated, and they're grumpy. So what I would recommend, if you're going to requeen something on a dearth, what is the mode of operation here? Are you literally just pinching this bad queen? If so, what I find is the safest. It's a very, very old method of requeening. It's so old that I don't think there's a name for it, but it's literally pinch the queen and then let them figure it out. Let them make as many queen cells as they want to make. Come back 5 to 7 days later, shake the bees off the frames, find all the queen cells that they made. It's all their last opportunities. Smush every single one of those. And when you're in there that second time, add your queen into the cage. Add your replacement queen to the colony, and do that inside of the cage. For me, you can go one or two different ways. If you're picking up that queen same day, or if you're having multiple queens shipped and you can just have the attendants inside of the box but not inside of the cage, I think that works fantastic late in the season, especially in the dearth, because sometimes the queens get rejected not because of the queen, they get rejected because of the attendants that are inside of the cage. So for a lot of folks that are coming out, stopping out here, and then they're going right back into the hives, we've already put their plan together. They've already pinched the queen. They've let them make the queen cells. They knock all the queen cells down. They're hopelessly queenless, as some would say. Now, what are they going to do? They have no future opportunity. If you give them just the queen that's inside the cage, boy, the take rate on that is just extremely high. That's what I would do if you have the opportunity. Is let them make the cells, knock the cells down, and just introduce the queen in the cage. But at that point, I don't think that the attendants are going to be a deal breaker. But keep that colony fed first. As you go to pinch that queen, put a bucket of feed on them, fill up their feed, or whatever your feeding mechanism is. I like bucket feeders, especially for this, because you can put a bucket feeder right on top of the colony. Don't need to keep getting back in there. They've got feed on top. They're happy. And keep them happy during that process. Keep them well fed. And you'd be surprised how late in the season you can requeen, how late in the season you can make downsizing splits if you keep them happy and juiced up. That's what I would do. Okay, so I love those kind of questions. You got to be careful getting me talking about queens, because I'll go all day. Catherine Alcept asks, I'm changing over to Greg's wax-dipped migratory lids. Well, thank you for that. I've always used inner covers with telescoping lids. Is there any differences with overwinter between the two types? That is a fantastic question. Bruce, I would think Bruce and I probably overwinter very similar. Brian, I think, is a wild card because Brian, I still think, has some telescoping lids in place. Brian, but I think you also have some of our telescoping lids in place with no inner covers. Have you overwintered with both? And what differences have you seen using a system that has inner cover and telescoping lid versus a system that just has a standard migratory lid with the patty rim on it?
So my overwintering is like Greg said, it's like a wild card because I use the insulated inner covers. So that said, whatever type of lid I have on my colonies, at that point it doesn't matter because I have an insulated inner cover that if you look at my insulated inners, I built a shim. It's probably, I think I put a 4-inch shim on the insulated inner and then used great stuff foam on it also. So they have the insulated inner, plus they have like 4 inches of great stuff on there. And then there's enough of a hollowed out section in the middle of that where I can put my Hive Alive fondant. So really it doesn't matter. I mean, you could have telescoping, you could have a migratory, whatever on top of that. At that point, it really doesn't matter. So,
yeah. Bruce, I know you are all migratory lids without patty rims. That's how you roll down Alabama, I'm sure. No extra ventilation, no extra anything like that, right?
Well, I mean, I use migratory lids pretty much on everything, but I prefer the patty rims if I've got all kinds of lids, but my new lids that I'm getting pretty much are going to have the patty rims on them. I've got a lot of those flat. Is it HDO type lids or just flat lids you put on there?
MDO, HDO.
Yeah, MDO or HDO, just flat lids. You can just take a piece of plywood and anything that's flat, the size you need, you can put on there. But I've kind of just started using. I mean, I like the migratory lids with the patty rims. That's what I like to use. But I've got all kinds of stuff on my colonies, for sure.
Catherine, we've got same with these guys. We've got a mixture of things here, primarily so we can show and teach, especially in the learning yard. We've got an Apiary setup where everything is insulated. The top, has got feeders, which is kind of ventilated around the feeder and then ventilated out of that top lid some. And what I have noticed is I made a little disclaimer in the most recent Nature's Image podcast that just launched or published yesterday, Treatment Free with Fred Dunn. Little disclaimer on the front side: if you've got tender toes, be sure to lace up your steel toes because you're bound to have your toes stepped on. And so this is a tender toe, lace up your steel boots. If anyone listening, I'm not real worried about wintering configurations. We could get lost in the sauce on condensing hives versus insulate. Honestly, I don't think it matters as much as folks want to believe that it does. What matters is that your bees are healthy. All these things, wrapping, this is just me, guys. So don't start flaring up and getting upset because I do something different. I'm trying to be real with you. What I have noticed is wrapping, insulating, ventilating, all of those things, they are creating small, maybe significant, but small buffers against an underlying condition, and that is sickness. What I have seen is that colonies that are healthy and are virus-free could care less about what's going on. They cruise right through, they do their thing, no problems. It's the colonies that we haven't been managing responsibly that have high viral loads, the ones that are a little too sick, that need all the little extra things. Now, I'm not saying don't do all the little extra things, but what I'm saying is, if you've got a Great Pyrenees dog, right, and it's outside, and that rascal wants to live in the snow, wants to waller in the snow, does not want to come inside, right? And the neighbors see a farm dog out there, on a 4-degree day, and he's living his best life out there, just doing his thing. And a neighbor will call, the pound and say, these people are, neglecting their animals because they're out the dog wants to, that's what the dog wants to do. It's not the same thing with bees. It's not the same thing as if you're cold, they're cold. Let's bring them inside. No, that's not the same thing. Brian, we've got a fancy word for that. Do you remember that big fancy word? See? That's Brian's a master beekeeper in the making. The thing about it, I think you have to consider is the quick knee-jerk reaction is very simple to just say, well, what do bees do in trees? Well, there's an R value of maybe 1.2 to 1.7, depending on the variety of trees and the tree cavity and the density of the wood and how much rot and decay and that. Here's the thing. I can just relay what I have seen with our own bees. That is East Central Ohio. That is where we may see winters that'll hit -5. Some years we may get 2 or 3 feet of snow. If we're lucky, we get 4 to 6 feet, which I haven't seen in a long time. You know, we're getting a lot of ice and rain, so a lot of dampness. And what we're seeing is a lot of up and down temps. Well, it might be 45 or 50 on a December or January day and drop down to 7 at nighttime. Those are the swings that we're seeing. The bees that have low or no mites in their washes going into Thanksgiving in the first part of December are the ones that could care less about any of that. They're just cruising right along. They might need a little supplemental feed. They might need some fondant on top, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not stressed to the point to where that next little thing is the nail in the coffin. The bees that aren't doing well, that are sick, that's where the wraps, that's where the windbreaks, that's where the that's where all these things come into place. So I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm saying put your time, attention, and focus and finances even maybe into keeping the bees healthy, keeping them clean, and then all these other little things matter less. How we overwinter is, people are going to say it's ridiculous. I would probably overwinter exactly how Bruce does, right? We keep them clean, we put the lid on, maybe we'll sing them a song. Good luck, ladies. We'll see you when the sun starts shining. That's about it. There's no extra, no ventilation. There's no adjusting the boxes, cracking here. There's no cracking the lids. There's no foam this. There's no insulation that. It's literally 3/4 inch wax dipped boxes, an R value of 0.7 in the thickness. That's it. With a 3/4 inch migratory lid with a 1/2 inch rim around it. That's it. With maybe fondant on top, right over the center. Rock and roll, ready to go. They explode in the spring. But we've got healthy bees, and I think that makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Preach, brother, preach.
I'm trying to be careful because you know, it's just one of those. There it is. Look at Brian. Aren't you? I am so proud of you, Bruce. Really. Let's give him a round of applause. Bruce has got the things figured out. Look at fireworks, thumbs up. I mean, what is next? I
want to see him do this though. He's got to get it figured out. Look, he can't. Look.
Oh,
look at him. Look at him. He's just like, he's fancy.
Way to go. Okay, let's see here. Guys, we're getting to be, what time is it? Where's my clock on this thing?
9:44.
Whoa, we're almost 2 hours. We're supposed to not do that. Let's see. Guys, help me out here. Brian, have you seen any other, there's so many things here. Are there any more in all caps?
No, JW had a question though. And they told
Mr. JW Irwin himself, the man, the myth, the legend. Did you guys know? I'm not sure if I should be telling this or not, but JW may or may not be going into the raccoon loincloth business. I'm just saying it would be a good venture. I think he could probably team up. Maybe Bruce could do the modeling. Bruce's Bodacious Bees and Emporium and stuff.
Yes.
I think this could be a good fit, guys. I think we need a beekeeper Shark Tank just to throw these ideas around.
Yep.
Could be a big win.
Well, with Bruce's Bodacious body bars, his skin just looks so nice. So for him to model whatever JW comes up with, it's like a match made in heaven.
It is. Where's Brian Lee at? There's got to be a T-shirt being printed right now. Brian Lee's on it. Right.
Boom.
You guys remember what was it? In the 90s, I think it was 90s, maybe it was 80s, 90s. When it was like Body by Jake, you know, the guy, what do you call this? The wrestling outfit thing that, that's Bruce. Body by Bruce. Look at that, man. Put them away, Bruce. Do you have a concealed carry permit down there for them things? All right. JW asks, Greg, have you dipped any of the MDO migratory lids? We've dipped everything. Absolutely everything. And that all dips to a certain extent. But depending on what waxes you're using, one of the worst for MDOs and HDOs, anything with a paraffin blend in it, the paraffin just doesn't cooperate. It's a really rough way to go. It ends up with really greasy, slimy messes. But paraffin is a cheap filler, and you'll find it in a lot of the blends. If you're using it on something like that, you will really see the paraffin. So can you dip MDO? Sure, you can. Just know you're going to have probably some greasy, slick lids, but it can certainly be done. MDO, for the most part, if it's MDO, both sides, sometimes it's one-sided, sometimes it's MDO on one, HDO on the other, sometimes HDO, HDO. If it's just a straight MDO, what we're talking about is concrete form boards, and a lot of the MDOs will have almost like a paper surfaced side where you spray a concrete release spray onto it. So when you're forming up concrete walls, those don't stick, and they can pop off and kind of just reuse those. The issue with that is a lot of concrete forming is not being done like that anymore. So those are becoming kind of harder and harder to find. So if you do find those new, they're usually pretty expensive. If you find them used, it's an enormous amount of work to get those cleaned up. But have I dipped them? I think we have dipped. I can't think of anything we haven't dipped or tried to dip. So can you do it? Yeah, but the results may vary.
I can say from experience that the first few years I had bees, I had primarily HDO. I have a fair number of MDO lids now, and those things last for years and years, man. They last really good.
Yeah.
I had HDO lids that probably lasted 8 or 10 years. So, it's probably not like wood wax dip boxes, but that's a pretty darn good lifespan for a piece of plywood that, just cut up and put on the hives. They're pretty tough.
Yep.
And they're perfectly flat too. They're perfectly, there's no warping or anything in them. They're perfectly flat. They do work well for lids on beehives. Once again, I've never used a inner cover that I know of, maybe just to try it out a time or two, but everything I do just goes straight on the top of the colony with no inner covers. So
sounds good. That's a lot of fun. Let's get into how about that we get into this giveaway and then we wrap it up. For some reason, I've lost the ability to get to starred comments or go back and forth between.
I think we don't have any more starred comments. I don't think. I think we're done.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah,
so if I
there's
hit
no
one. Okay, good. Oh, we got through them. Okay, good deal. Okay, excellent. All right, so are you ready for a giveaway? Let's do. Well, how are we gonna? We can't do the hat. Brian, we can't do. Okay, I need your help. So I've got this really cool thing over here. I don't know exactly what it's called, so I'm going to help you guys along a little bit. Now, Brian, I need your Google Foo. Do you guys remember? Gosh, I used to love the show called Quantum Leap, and there was this guy, and it was like the pre-iPods, before iPod
or whatever.
Right? Iggy was the computer, right? And he would talk to Iggy and find all the things in the future and then ask all the answers. It's kind of creepy how close Iggy is. Instead of Siri, we should have named them that Iggy. Then we could just, anyways, I'm geeking out. Anyways, on point here. What was I saying? What in the world?
Something about Iggy.
Iggy, Quantum Leap.
You don't know what
Ryan, I need you to be talking to Iggy and figure out, do the Google Foo and find out when folks are telling us what this is. I need you to Google it and see if you can find out what it is. All right. If we can't figure out what it is tonight, leave the comments. Once the video publishes to YouTube, leave it in the comments there, and we'll give a Hive tool away there too. But if you win tonight, if you can figure out what this mystery object is, we're going to give you one of these brand new Hive tools. Super awesome. You can check them out, nature'simagefarm.com. Also, while you're there on the website, I'm going to show you these things real quick. We've got the good stuff. We've got the Easy Ox oxalic acid made right here in Ohio, produced by a military veteran. Guys, it's approved for 2 grams per brood box. And let me say this. It's approved with the use of supers on. Yes, it is legal to use with supers on, just like Formic Pro. No, you are not going to get turned into your state by using oxalic acid with supers on. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to get handcuffed and thrown in the paddy wagon if your state is approved for oxalic acid, which Ohio is. So we've got this on the website. It's a 400-gram bag, extremely affordable. You can check that out. And the other thing that I really love, that's on the website right now too, Bruce's favorite, and big thanks to Bruce for getting us on this product, Honeybee Gone. What a game changer this stuff has been. Clears supers out so incredibly fast without the rotten peanut butter barf smell as some of the other products. Smells good, and it really clears the bees out. All right, on to the giveaway. Help us figure out what this thing is. Now, what do we need to figure this thing out? Probably need a tape measure. And it would be handy if the tape measure actually had increments on it. Maybe we'll use this side. All right, check it out. Ready? Now.
What the heck?
All right, so you might be saying, well, that's easy. What are these, guys? Can you see this? Okay, any guesses? What is this? Oh, no big deal, right? They're just deep bee frames. Or are they? So check this out. Here is a standard. I need to come back here. Let's see. Let me bring the mic back. Here's a standard deep frame. Okay. Here's hint number 1. Here's the frame in question. Don't mind this busted corner here. Okay. So check this out. Hint number 1. Look how much deeper this is. Now, same in width. But check out, it's way deeper. All right, so hint number 1, it's deeper than a standard deep frame. But wait, there's more. So these have little tabs here. Can anyone see why would there be tabs on your sidebars? Do you notice anything different about these sidebars?
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice how these sidebars, how come I cannot figure out how to get this thing straight? Because everything's backwards on the camera. Here we go. You notice that there is no contoured edge.
That's too small to be a lens.
So you see how a standard frame is contoured from the top meat working down? Look at this. It's straight all the way down. So isn't it interesting? Now, when you put 2 frames like this together, you create bee space here. When you put another frame together, it creates bee space in this area. The bees can go in and out. All right. These frames are so old, it's really before bee space was built into the frames. They're just straight all the way down. Okay.
Huh.
And so what they've done to keep the space there is there's these tabs. Oh, my camera moves by itself.
Wow.
That's weird. Okay. Now check this out. Here's another one of these. Okay. Now this one has, it looks like almost like little staples that are in the side to create the bee space. You see that? There we go. All right. So that's pretty cool. So what happens is when you put, and it's only on one side of the frames. If you notice, there's a staple only on that side, not the other. So what happens is when you put these together, it creates bee space. All right. Same thing on this side. If we were to flip and put these 2 together, like this and then like this, the staple creates the bee space. Let me flip it over this side so you can see. Boy, sorry if I don't know why my camera's moving like that. I didn't know it was that smart. Okay, so it creates bee space there. All right, so that's another hint. Okay, let me talk to my camera here and tell it to knock it off. Let's see. I'm gonna get everyone seasick. Okay, Let's take, oh, it's tracking. We're tracking. Yeah, none of that. Okay. All right. So it's way deeper. It has, it's a straight sidebar. Okay. It's got these staples in there to help with bee space. Now check this out though. Look at this foundation. Can you guys see that? It's reinforced down the edge here.
Huh.
Imagine, if you were to put in just a regular sheet on a deep frame, okay? The bottom of the frame is grooved, okay? The top of the frame has a wedge bar. Can you imagine what would happen if you were to put a sheet of regular foundation into a deep frame or even this deeper deep frame? There's no way you can keep that dimensionally stable. It would be blowing out of there, falling out of there. You'd be cross-wiring, fishing string, bobby pins, you name it, just to keep it in place. Not these. These inserts have a pre-built metal, what is that, a cleat or a side to kind of hold everything in there and keep that nice and tight.
Interesting.
All right. So last thing I'll say, maybe we have some guesses. Do we have any guesses on anybody? Anyone figure this out yet? Let's see. Let's go through before I give the next hint. Okay, let's see. Okay, Short Pants Bee Farm has a guest. Okay, that might be Andrew G has a guess. DC,
Somebody said AZ frame. Somebody said like an AZ national or European frame.
Okay, A Bee's Closet asks, what is your website? That is naturesimagefarm.com. Ina Woodard, maybe Lands. Okay, we're going to star all these. We've got Dog House.
Texas Deep. We got European Arizona AZ, European AZ frames.
All right, so I've got these. Let's see, to go through.
Redfish. I like Redfish's answer. That's one of them British things, he says. Redfish says.
What does he say?
He says it's one of them British things.
One of them British things.
Short Pants Bee Farm says this is what they use in Europe. Maybe a Lands Hive.
Okay, all right. I think I've got everything started so far. Hey, Gloria Yoder. I haven't heard from her in a long time. There she is. Jumbo Datant. Okay, let's.
National frame, Datant frame, national frame.
All right. Mark Bassinger. Well, Mark brought. Okay, so here's the story. Mark came out and visited the shop, and a buddy of his found all this in his grandpa's barn. Okay, there's all this old equipment that Mark's grandpa had. I'm 42. Mark's probably, I don't know how old Mark is. I'm not a real good guess on that. He's probably the same age, maybe a couple years older. So it was been his grandpa. So my grandpa is 90 years old. So if grandpa was keeping bees when he was my age, let's say he was 30 to 40, we're talking 50, 60 years ago. Someone do the math. That goes back 229. So we're probably in the it could be 1950s to 1970s, possibly. But that doesn't mean the equipment was that new. It could have been older equipment then too. All right. So here's the last hint. We've got, I think we've got all the first guesses and the timestamps. All right, Brian, we're gonna have to do a little research here. I don't know if you can even find any of that stuff. And maybe if you can find a way to screenshot the,
I think Brian, Jason might be onto something there.
Well, we don't give it away yet. Let's go in order of the, Bruce, pull up the starred comments and go through the timestamps there.
I can't see.
Oh, you can't see that? Okay, Brian, let's go through that. Here's the last clue. Okay, it's going to be, the inside dimension is going to be standard. It's 17 3/4 on the inside. The tops are going to be 19 inches on the top here. Okay, here's the kicker. What is this dimension this way? I guess let's see if we can do this.
I typed in the first one, Duracell, and all I got is batteries.
I
typed in Duracell.
I think Duracell was an old type. All right, let's go this way. Let's go outside dimension. Let me look here. Okay.
Yeah. I typed in Duracell B frame and I still got batteries.
3/8. 11 3/8. is the depth on that. 11 and 3/8.
Is that inside depth or is that top
It's
to
OD
bottom?
outside. Yep. And
What's
then
the inside? What's the inside depth? I think I have an answer for you. Is it 10 and a half?
Looks like a 3/4 and a half inch.
What is
So
it inside?
inside would be a 10 and an eighth.
Okay. What's the length? What's the inside measurement lengthwise?
Inside I would be 16 and 3/4. OD would be 17 and 11/16. Call it 17 and 3/4.
Just say 18 maybe. Okay.
I typed in European AZ frames and I got a whole entire page of A-style frame houses. Oh, this is hilarious.
Okay. I don't know. Let's see. Who does anybody know? Do we have the winner here? Bruce? Let's get Bruce. All right, Bruce, what do you got there? What does that say?
Look at Jason's answer.
Jason. Okay, Jason.
Or it might be Bruce Brown, Langstroth Jumbo. That might be it too, but I think it might
Bruce
be.
Brown,
It might be. It might be from Bohemia. It might be Jason from Bohemia Bees. That might be it, or it might be the. Those dimensions you gave are really close to what Jason said. But
Gloria Yoder. I did see it. See about a jumbo Dadant. Is that an old frame?
Look up the Quimby Hive, the Quimby jumbo frame as well, the Quimby frame that Jason talked about.
Brian's the judge here. Let's tell you what. Let's see. Can we?
That
you got there? Can you blow that up, or let's see?
That's what I was showing you. It gives the dimensions that are a little bit different than what you said, but they're very, very close. I'm trying to find a Langstroth jumbo.
Let's not get hung up on the. It's definitely a Langstroth, but let's go for the deep. What is that? What was it saying? The dimension is from here, the outside dimension of this frame, or the inside?
It didn't give the outside. Brian, do you have that pulled up? The dimensions?
It don't give it. That's a print. So like that's just a picture.
Hold on, let me go back to. Let me see if I can find it because I did have it pulled up here. Where'd it go? Okay, it says here, the Quimby hives originally made by Moses Quimby and first adopted by us contained an 8 frames measuring 10.5 by 18 inches inside. So you see in the picture it's a little bit bigger front to back.
It's bigger.
But the top to bottom is almost identical.
Look up Brother Adam used these frames. Jumbo Dadant. Can we get some specs on a jumbo Dadant? Oh, look at this. Bruce Brown says Langstroth jumbo.
Yeah, that's
is there a Langstroth Dadant battle here?
Look at that.
That's it.
This doesn't have the. This don't have like those side.
Type in Langstroth data. Langstroth jumbo dimensions.
That's interesting.
Wow, this isn't quite as easy as I thought. I feel like
18 inches by. Says,
let's be fair and measure this one.
It's got it in millimeters of all things. Good grief.
This other one's 11 1/4.
Yeah, 11 1/4 says right here, Langstroth jumbo frame is top bar 19 inches, side bar 11 1/4, bottom 17 9/16, whatever that means.
Yeah, this goes straight to this.
Whatever measurement you just gave me is exactly what this one is.
So Langstroth jumbo.
Langstroth jumbo. Okay. See if Dadant had a jumbo and if that was the same size.
I would guess it's the same thing. I would get because Langstroth is just a type of frame. It's not a particular brand, right?
Well, it depends how back. There was some of the, if you read the history of beekeeping, there's a really fascinating the wars of equipment between Root, Langstroth, all these guys.
And the price on this Langstroth jumbo frame is it looks like it's in pounds, so it must be a European thing. And somebody said European frames, so maybe that's because a lot of it's in millimeters too, is how it's measured. But this one says it's 19 by 11 and a quarter by 17 and 9/16. So Dadant jumbo, do you find that, Brian, anywhere? Dadant versus Langstroth jumbo. Here we go. Let's see what it says. Oh no, I don't know if we can.
Oh, this is a blog.
This may be it looks like it's between Gloria Yoder and Bruce Brown. And then Gloria Dura Gilt Foundation.
Duragilt, yeah, that was.
Yeah,
that's the Duragilt. It may be Duragilt Foundation, but the frame itself is. The Duragilt, I think, was that foundation that had the wax. The Duragilt had wax in the middle. Does it have wax or is it plastic?
No, it's wax with a steel.
That's the type of foundation it is, I think.
So what frame does Duragilt Foundation go into?
It fits in any of them, I think. They have different sizes.
So here we go. What were the dimensions again?
11 and a quarter by 19.
That's it right there. Jumbo Langstroth brood jumbo frames with a Hoffman sidebar.
Oh, that's not the Hoffman sidebar.
Yeah,
these are not Hoffman sidebars.
It's similar.
Though.
It'd be a
great
jumbo.
This is probably an older version of it, but that's the style frame it is. It's probably a really old version of it, though. I would bet.
I tell you what, Bruce and Gloria, I know both of you know where to find the website. Send us a message, contact us, shoot us a message. I'm going to send both of you a Hive tool because those were good guesses. And if I miss somebody who gets at the same time, we'll have to go back to the timestamp and see. How cool is that? And what time frame? What time frame were you guys pulling up on those? I mean, if it's Brother Adam, it would be.
I don't.
Yeah, I guess it could have been 50s, 60s.
Wow.
I think they still. That may still be. Is that still a size in Europe? Do they still use those? I don't know. Is that something, Brian? You look like you buy them, didn't you? Not the ones with the spikes on the side, but the ones with the. Anyway.
Well, they were in the UK. Is where the website that I was.
That's me too. So it must be that somebody said European frames, so they probably were talking about them too. Yeah. But anyway,
it was those same exact dimensions, 11 and a quarter by 19.
It could be. Jason says he still thinks it's Moses Quimby frames. It sounds like, from what I was looking back, the Moses Quimby stuff was really, really old. The articles about him, so he may have been one of the original creators of it, and they may have morphed a little bit in their size. They might be a little bit smaller now as far as front top, deep wise they were the same depth, but they were a little bit smaller front to back, so maybe they've changed a little bit over the years. But anyway, that is really,
we're going to look at the father of American practical beekeeping, Mr. Moses Quimby.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe he's the originator, so maybe it would go all the way back to, it would be an American.
So his inventions that I see on here, it says the Quimby Hive, the Quimby Bellows smokers, curved pointed uncapping knife, and modified Langstroth Alexander veil. Doesn't say any, like in this reference that I have here.
Yet.
Frame, yeah.
The Quimby Hive. Quimby, okay.
Quimby's
detail. Okay, wow, it's a lot of reading. Well, I didn't know we were going to find such a interesting piece of equipment. Okay, so let's see. It says here, Moses Quimby, the originator of the stream team beekeeping chat. What? Are you kidding me? Wikipedia? It must be right.
Bruce Brown says he used to have 4 boxes of those frames, and they were very heavy. So
wow,
he's familiar with. Yeah, I imagine they were if they were bigger than standard deep. So I imagine they were pretty heavy. But that's awesome. So he knows what he's talking about. He's actually had some of them.
All right. Well, Bruce Brown and there's probably was a David Langstroth, what they were called, war between the two, and that's why one's probably just a maybe a hair different, but we're going to send a Hive tool to either go to our website, contact us, shoot us a message, and we'll get them shipped out. That was pretty cool. So thanks, Mark, for dropping those by. I think Mark is going to see if he can find one of the boxes and bring it here. We'll put them on display and folks can kind of check them out. I think it's pretty cool, some of the older style things. You know, when you really think about it, I mean, how it would be unpractical to raise queens in those, but can you imagine the beautiful brood nest on one of those jumbo deeps? Can you imagine how heavy that they would be? I don't even care with that Duragilt reinforced edge. Boy, I would be scared to be. You'd have to be mindful on how you're pulling and manipulating. You know, you'd almost have to treat it like a piece of natural drone, where you're not going to go up and like this. You know, you're going to go up and you're going to use steering wheel on your inspections and not just. You know, can you imagine dropping? What would that weigh? Can you imagine how much honey that would be if you were a knucklehead using those for supers?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anyways, well, hey, that was a lot of fun. Guys, what's going on? Bruce, I'll start with you. Bruce, what's new or what's going on at Bruce's Bees this coming week?
I'm just going to finish going through the rest of the colonies that I need to pull the Apiary strips out of, and I have debated doing something I've never done before. Maybe trying to. When I was going through the colonies last weekend, they were full of drones, so I'm debating possibly maybe trying to graft a few just for fun to see what happens.
Sure.
If I have time, I don't know. But I've got that Michael Palmer queen left up in Ozark, and I went through them Saturday, and they are just perfect, gentle, just beautiful bees. They look a lot like yours, to be honest, Greg. They're very similar looking bees, and I may try to pull some grafts out of her if I can find some appropriate size larvae, if I can find the time. I don't know if I will or not, but that's my thought, is to possibly maybe just try it for fun. And if I could get some late season queens, even if it's just 5 or 6 or whatever, you know, just to kind of play around with to see what happens, that would be kind of cool. I'd like to requeen some of my colonies or get some more queens down here, but I just don't know. I may just roll with what I got and then try to, you've talked me off the mountain a little bit. I was going to just order a bunch of queens, and you kind of said, just remember what happened last year. You don't have to do that. And so I've kind of backed off my thought, but I could make a few queens myself and just see what happens. Maybe if I don't do it, then we'll just roll with what I got. But right now, that's my plan. Finish up pulling mite treatments out, check for a few mites, and then just kind of, we're going into a little bit of a holding pattern here. If I try to make a few more queens, that'll be a little more work. But if I don't, then we're kind of going into that pre-winter, just assessing colonies, trying to keep them, you know, the weight on them, and trying to make sure we keep the mites where they need to be, and just seeing what we end up with.
Awesome. Well, looks like you got some choices to make, and you've got a prior history of making calls to kind of go off. At least, you know, that's a huge blessing to have enough years under your belt to say, I did this before, here was the result. And so now you have that to use to make a decision, where so many folks are in the middle of, it's their first time for this, it's their first time for that, and then it's like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I can get by with that. And so that's a part of that learning process. So at least you've got the history to say, okay, maybe it didn't work out so great this late, maybe I'll hold tight, be more reserved, and kind of go from there. So I think it's a good call there, Bruce. Brian?
If I need to get some more queens in, I can, but I may just try that and see what happens. I have plenty of honey this year. I mean, I think I have plenty of honey, and so I think that's a pretty good amount of colonies for me to have, the number I had this year. So I think if I can kind of hover around that number, you know, assuming the honey flow is good again, which, you know, this was a pretty good year, and so next year may not be, but on a good crop, I couldn't have done a whole lot more this year when it came to honey. So I don't know that I want to grow that much bigger until I have more time to fool with it. You know, I'm pretty much maxed out on my time and what I can actually produce and sell. So I think I'm kind of hitting a sweet spot as far as how many colonies I want and how much honey I need. I think we'll see how things go. Maybe this hot honey is going to take off and be a national brand. Who knows?
Hey, there you go.
That's awesome.
We'll see.
Awesome. Brian, what's it's a loaded question. Brian's got a lot on deck, and in the hole, and in the dugout, all ready to go. Brian, what are you up to the next week?
Well, in the next week, I don't have it in my schedule to sleep. So Doesn't fit. I figure there's plenty of time to rest when I finally croak. I'm just going to ride the wave, man. I'm going to ride it. So tomorrow we are working and then doing rehearsal. Friday we have wedding. Saturday I am visiting down at your place. So Sunday will be the day where I'll go over and check my colonies. I've been kind of like exactly like Brian says there. I'm getting my mycology degree. Sunday will be the day where I go over and I think I don't think I know I have to put a couple hours work in. Redfish, thank you. And it's going to be doing my mite washes. It won't hurt even if I just plan, even if I find the numbers are low still, it's not going to hurt them just to shoot them with a dose of OA, right. Just to keep those phoretic ones under control. So I'll probably just plan on that just get the whole thing going. They've got the DFM, their August DFM on, so that's there. I did put some more patty pieces on that they literally, I was worried because it went 2 weeks. Jason, thank you much too. It was 2 weeks from when I put the little pieces of patty on. And I mean, I've been putting just small little squares and they just devour it. Like I was worried that, I might have beetle issues. And I do want to say, Bruce isn't the only person that had a small hive beetle infestation. So when I was over yesterday and checking, do you want to know how many small hive beetles I found in a colony?
3.
How many?
3. It was horrible. I looked everywhere at that lid and I saw 3 of them run, and I was just like, "You got to be kidding me!" I almost torched the whole colony.
Now you got to be careful. So many folks were worried about it. Let me ask you this: this is a sensitive question. It's personal. You don't have to answer. We're not going to hold it against you if you feel like I've created boundaries, questions inside of these boundaries. I am just not going to. If you're just, we need a safe word. What's the safe word going to be? I don't. Honeypot. Honeypot is the safe word. So if we ask you a question, you're uncomfortable, just safe word's honeypot. Okay, Brian, when you were out there working these colonies, is it possible that you said hive beetle, hive beetle, hive beetle? He said it 3 times, just like Beetlejuice, and boom, it just exploded out. Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that could have been.
Word of the wise. We should write a beekeeping book.
Greg, I do want to, before we go into your ending, you're excellent at ending these off.
Gosh. Oh, stop.
I do want to say that, when I go over and check my colonies, I'm going to check them today like it was today. And yesterday was today's yesterday. And when I go over Sunday, that's going to be today's Sunday. So I want everybody to know that when you are checking your colonies in the future, that is today's future from tomorrow. So just remember that.
Hot tips from Brian.
That hurts my brain. It hurts my brain.
Live yesterday like it was tomorrow every day, unless it's today.
Exactly.
I'm burdened if my wife come before.
Let's
move on.
If we were any other talk show, we would have so much fodder constantly. It'd be ridiculous.
DC just Brian's brain is broke.
My brain is broke, I think.
Well, guys, it's a fun time of year for so many different reasons, but we've got the light at the end of the tunnel on so many fronts. It's awesome. I'm the kind of guy, though, is before you get close to the light being at the end of the tunnel, I'm already thinking about all the other things that I want to overcommit, all the other projects that I want to do, all the other things. That's just how I'm wired, and I'm a weirdo, but that's just kind of where it is. The queen season, we're really wrapping that up, and have a few more shipments to go. I'm going to give a shout out to our buddy J.W. Irwin, who drove all the way out here from Illinois to get some nukes with the Pepto Pinks, and he says he's loving those pinkies. I'm glad that you were able to get some into your yard there and trial them out and see if that's going to be a good fit for your breeding operation. I did want to let folks know that I want to apologize for all the folks who are still trying to get queens, and we can't. We can only make so many, and we're actually going to be doing things a little different, I think, next year. It's an incredible blessing that we've got more demand than we can make with the queens that we're putting out. Next year is going to look a lot different. We may not have a lot of public offering on queens until we work through all of the other lists. The only way to get on the list right now is if you are a previous buyer of queens. That's one way that you're going to get to the top of the list. The second way, the only way to get on the list for right now, is to go to our website at naturesimagefarm.com, hit the contact us, and send us a message and say that you want to get put on next year's list. We're going to work through those lists next year, and if we have any extra at that point, we'll put them on the website. But right now, we can only create so many queens. We are so thankful, and we appreciate everybody for ordering queens. It's been an absolute honor, really, to be able to make these queens and ship them all across the country to folks, have a little piece of what we're doing here. It's important. The story behind this genetic line, the folks that we have met, the genetic lines that we have put together to get us where we're at, it's a beautiful thing, and we're honored that so many folks feel that that's valuable to them, and they want to see that in their breeding operations and their apiaries. So from all of us here, thank you. So next year's queens are going to look a lot different. So if you want to get on the list, if you haven't already bought queens from us, go to naturesimagefarm.com to contact us. Shoot us a message that you want to get on next year's list. We'll put you onto the list, and we'll contact you next year when those things are ready. Other than that, it's been of just such a good year, and I can't thank everybody enough. We've been busy here with the Endura Hive wax dip line of equipment. And I'm going to thank Anthony Ellis. He's a listener, and he's got a skid coming his way that got picked up today, heading out to Virginia. So Anthony, be on the lookout there. It's just, everyone that supports what we do, I can't tell you how important that is. We're a small outfit, a large family, digging in, doing the work, doing something that hasn't been done like this in our area. And so for folks to be able to support what we do is important, not just to keep good quality queens and equipment out there, but every dollar support helps us not only keep the figurative lights on, but it helps us continue to be a lighthouse to so many other folks and all the other ways that we're there. And that's really important too. And so I just want, again, I cannot thank you guys enough for everything that you do. Jonathan Bennett has a question here. Greg, are you selling AI queens next year? We're going to be focusing a lot on AI queens here. We've got some really stellar lines that we're going to be bringing together, and that's actually one of my goals here in the next 2 weeks. And I don't know if I'm going to get around to it. It's going to be either tomorrow or Saturday or Monday. But we are going to get into the monster hive. It is 14 boxes tall, and yes, full of bees. We just had the inspector out. Guys, it's full of bees. She doesn't want to swarm. There is hundreds and hundreds of pounds of honey on there before goldenrod. I got to figure out, what am I going to do? Am I just going to let her rip, tater chip, and just keep stacking boxes, see where they go the rest of the year? What I've got to do, even if I've got to go through, and I'll try to get a camera going when I do it, but I got to take all those boxes down. We have 14 minus 5. Got to take that many boxes off, pull the excluder, get down to the brood, and get grafting material. My number one goal for that colony is graft, if I can get 200 or 300 daughters grafted off of her this year still, that is my number one goal. My other goal is to also collect drone semen from that colony so we can use that and cross that with some of our running line Appalachian mutts with the Caucasian Carney influence. Bring these two together and see what happens. Try all those out. And the cool thing is, some of the folks here that were at that learning yard where we went in there, we dug through, we broke them down, we had that powwow. Those folks are going to be the first ones to get to actually trial these monster hive genetics. So we're going to try to make those available too, a little bit special offering. I'm really excited about the queen future. And it's one of those things where you feel called to go and you to do it. And it's important. We've been saying it for a very long time now. Yes, we believe in controlling mites. And yes, we have a shop and we sell the equipment and the tools to help you control mites. But I've posed this question with some of the smartest folks in the industry. We are spending so much time controlling mites, and I get that. But until we can have a situation where our bees have viral resistance, we're going to be chasing our tails for a very long time. I think what we're actually seeing is that bees are developing viral resistance. We're seeing colonies that can have high mite counts, but somehow are as healthy as can be. Is it because they don't have extreme viruses, these megaviruses inside the colonies from the mites? Is it that they're able to resist for all these reasons? Is the propolis envelope in these colonies making a difference? Is the Caucasians with so much propolis making a difference? Is using supplements and things that are having antiviral qualities in the colony? Is that making a difference? I think that's the future, is working on viral resistance. Not so much mite tolerance, but viral resistance. Because newsflash, if it's not the varroa mite, it could be something else in the future. It's a long haul. It's going to take a lot of work. But I think that's what's exciting about queen breeding, is trying to figure it out, trying to do better every single year. That's the name of the game. Do better. On that note, Bruce and Brian, man, I can't thank you enough, not only for your friendship, but for the years now of collaboration here on the Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. Who knows what the next several years are going to look like? But what I can say, like the honeybee is to the hive, we're better together. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the folks who are tuning in to this Stream Team Beekeeping Chat live here on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. If you're playing back and listening on the podcast, we really appreciate you. Folks, be sure to check out the audio version of the podcast. Available everywhere you get your normal podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Podbean, all those things. Check out the last episode we just released, the long lost treatment-free episode with Fred Dunn. There is some gold in that one. You don't want to miss it. Fellas, next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, whose channel are we on? Brian, we're on Brian's channel. Castle Hives next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.